Sounds good. So I am Lisa Sunny, for those that don't know, screen name Stronger Than Before. And my primary topic on my page is abuse, and specifically narcissistic abuse. Having said that, narcissism is not always the cause of abuse, of course. And so my topics range across all forms of abuse. And just to sort of segue into like what we're doing here as part of my introduction, I have spent a lot of time talking about weaponized incompetence as abuse, and I've been invited onto podcasts and had articles written regarding my take on weaponized incompetence being abuse. And I often watch your content and I think like, that's abuse. And I think that's where we can kind of bridge some of the conversation because you're such an expert in this area. So for my followers who may not know who you are, introduce yourself.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm Laura Danger. I am an educator, I'm an advocate. I do basically domestic labor equity coaching. And so I'm certified in the Fair Play method, which is, I didn't write the book, but it was a system developed by an author, Eve Rodsky. And it's a way to explicitly communicate with your partner about domestic labor and find more equity and balance. And so on my page, I talk a lot about, I will use those situations, those viral videos where millions of people are laughing at them. And I agree, incredibly harmful. And we're talking now a tool of abuse. And
Mhm.
so I talk a lot about like what's going on underneath this. Why are we laughing at this? What does it feel like to experience this? And my platform is a lot like providing the tools, assuming it isn't abuse. So I'm so happy to talk to you because it is, it's all harm. It's all harm. And at what point do you arm yourself with the like, I wouldn't know how to help somebody. I wouldn't know how to help.
hmm I completely get that. And in all honesty, when I watch some of your content, I can see, or at least I believe I can see from my perspective, that what I'm witnessing is abuse, and it's not necessarily being viewed that way. Not to say by you, I'm reading your comment section, and I get it because even when I talk about it, I mean, the comment sections are filled with like, "Oh, come on," and this sort of dismissiveness that we see societally that it's normal or that it's okay. And something
Mm-hmm.
that really irks me is the idea that men, that's just men. It isn't. And I find it odd that, I get called a misandrist 37 times a day, every day, 7 days a week, and it rolls off now. But it's interesting because truly, if I were a misandrist, that means I hate men. I wouldn't actually care about these subjects. I care because I believe on every level that men are intelligent, capable, strong, smart, and have so many great qualities and are useful. It's not the right word, but in society, I don't like the idea that feminists hate men or that we're misandrists. If we're talking about equality, then how does that lead us into the home? And honestly, I mean, a big topic for men, and I talk about this a lot, especially lately, about sexual coercion. And honestly, the women who are not having sex with their husbands often are experiencing weaponized incompetence, and then the result is less or no sex. So it's all tied into so many different
Mm-hmm.
things. But we'll keep the topic obviously on weaponized incompetence, and kind of get into some of the scenarios that you see and how to tell, is it lazy or is it abuse?
Yeah, so you commented on something recently. I made a video where, there was that viral video of the guy who was like, oh, we forgot to pay our water bill for 7 months. And
Mhm.
it was like, okay, if this was not part of a pattern, in my opinion, like, I've done stuff like that before. There's still like layers of privilege that were really interesting there. Like this wealthy white couple talking about this versus like, if a black couple had highlighted this, it's like, oh, that's like neglect, you know. So our perception of it in and of itself was very interesting.
Mhm.
Um, but I made the video about that and I was like, it can cross a boundary into abuse. And of course, I knew I was going to talk to you about this. And immediately I got this comment that was like, yeah, my husband used to take the $250 for the bill and drink.
I
And
saw that comment.
I highlighted it, and then I saw you comment, be like, yes, that looks like abuse to me. So can you tell us more about, like, maybe we can talk about that video and what you saw in the comment section?
Perfect. So I think first thing I want to make clear is what is abuse, because I think that, there's a real misconception about what it is. And I won't go into like some huge long-winded explanation, but the true, maybe oversimplified, but short explanation of what is abuse: intention is a huge part of it, and a pattern. And
Okay.
so I think that is a huge indicator. And in many ways, I don't see how weaponized incompetence can exist without it being called abuse. Do I think that it's
Mm-hmm.
lazy, selfish, toxic, unknown, just men? No, I think every single circumstance is abuse. I think that you talk about abuse way more than you realize that you're actually talking about it, because it's become so normalized. But when we talk about intention and a pattern, weaponized incompetence is a pattern. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, is it intentional? Is it, and I've had the most insane debates, like just, I can't, I don't, I can't keep having the debates. It makes me very upset and heated, but I always use like one or two examples, usually like laundry, dishes, or leaving your underwear on the floor. I don't know about you all, but that was a thing in my previous marriage. And it's the idea of like, so he leaves his underwear on the floor. Does that matter? Okay, it doesn't matter to him, it matters to her. So it's not that he's abusing her, he doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But then follow me here. He doesn't care that his wife cares. And he so doesn't care that men will often say things like, if she cares so much, pick it up. It's just underwear, just pick it up. Why make a thing of it? But if it's just underwear and it's so easy to just pick it up, why don't you pick it up? Knowing that your wife feels resentment, knowing that that resentment causes her to be angry, causes her to probably not want sex with you, causing her to just be mad, causing her to get really mad about the dishes when she's not mad about the dishes, she's mad about the underwear. But it seems like such an easy solution. But the question then remains, why isn't the partner who's leaving it for their other partner, why aren't they taking more care? They don't care, which is kind of like abusers, how they don't care about their actual
Mm-hmm.
partner. What they care about is getting what they want and living the life that they want, which is underwear somehow. I don't know. I wear them and then they just end up in my drawer, folded and clean.
Right. That's okay. So here's something that I've heard when I've used strong language like that. Is, well, isn't she abusing me by forcing me to do something that I don't want to do? Like I don't want to wash the dishes. They don't matter to me. And so isn't she abusing me by telling me what to do?
Yeah, and that's a very misogynistic viewpoint, and a viewpoint of men whose aim may be to be divorced. In my view, those are not men who love their wives. And I also want to make it clear too that like it's not always men that are on, the ones that are doing it. Women do it too, albeit my own research, certainly my own experience, but my own research is such that women are doing it far, far less. But the men that are doing that, that say like, I don't want to do the dishes don't matter to me and they matter to her, so why is it we just default to what she wants? And my take on that is like, I personally, I enjoy eating my dinner off plates that don't have food on it from yesterday, because that's disgusting and honestly you could get sick from it. And so if the idea is that we live in a home where dishes are clean, which sort of to me seems so basic, someone has to clean the dishes. And it really just brings me back to the dishes need to be cleaned. And so what we're talking about is what? The timing of it. I would like the dishes done every night before bed,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's, what I get a lot of is, they just need to have a conversation. If they have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
about it, then it'll all be cleared up, because maybe it's women have a very specific way of doing things. My wife when I do the dishes, tells me that I didn't do it right. And then it makes me want to not do it at all. So I don't care about the dishes. And so when I do them anyway, she nags me for how I did them. And my view on that is almost always, it's like you did the dishes, like you loaded the dishwasher, but you didn't unload the dishwasher and put it away. So you didn't really do the dishes. You just put them, you did one step. You're not actually owning the task. And it all goes back to the care. The sheer idea that a man would flip it instantly, never once considering the perspective of the person who wants it done. You immediately said, she's abusing me by making me do the dishes. She's not making you do the dishes. She's asking you to do the dishes. And the result of you not doing the dishes is not punishment, right? It's not that she's now going to, and this phrase bothers me, but it's the phrase that is used. She's going to withhold sex or nag or be angry or give you the silent treatment as a tactic of abuse. It is a natural result of not caring about your partner. And so the type of man, because it isn't all men, the type of man that asks you that question is an abuser, in my view. You've outed yourself instantly as an abuser who does not want to learn. And I personally, as a content creator, wouldn't really aim to give that person like a true answer, because they're not looking for an answer. They're looking for an argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something really important because I got a piece of feedback. And like you said, like I do highlight videos where, in my opinion, you know, like the kid, I showed one a couple of months ago that I felt iffy on, because it was a woman who said she left the home for 3 hours and the baby was not, like, she had left instructions about what type of food and water to give when, and the baby did not get it.
I remember that video.
And I can't even remember what I said, but I took it down. I took it down within a couple of hours, because it felt off. But when I make my content, I am assuming that this is not a part of a pattern and is not intentional. And I try to present the tools that, like, I'm hoping that if my viewers saw this, they would take my tools, like, in fair play. Okay, how do you set a minimum standard of care? Like in our household, my husband and I used to fight about the dishes consistently. And I was always like, you're not doing them. And he's like, I'm doing some of them. And you're just mad that I'm leaving them in the rack and not doing it on your time schedule. And I'm like, no, you're not doing them. And we would just bicker back and forth. And then finally we sat down and we were curious with each other, like, why do you want them done at this time? Why aren't you doing them at this time? And we set a minimum standard that, like you said, it gets done mostly at least rinsed. So it's not like sitting overnight. And then it gets done completely empty once a day. Great. So the point of me presenting tools is that maybe you could take that when you're getting in these fights, try to communicate explicitly, be clear about it. But I also think that it's a tool to be like, oh no, I'm coming to you in good faith that I would like to solve these problems in our relationship. I have a set of tools. And if your spouse is like, no, you're abusing me. No, these things don't matter. And minimizing and withholding attention and starting these fights. Like, how do I help my audience identify how, like, what do you do with that when your spouse is like, no?
Okay. The answer is leave, but that's not, please no, I'm
Right.
not like, just leave your husband, poof,
Right,
done, problem
right.
solved.
Right.
When you find yourself in an abusive relationship, and again, while I talk about narcissistic abuse, I'm talking in this
And can you
live about,
clarify, in that circumstance, you believe that that is abuse when you come to
yes,
someone like, okay, cool.
I believe that it is abuse. And I know, yes, is that strong language, as you said? It is strong language. And I've heard, like I'll use Mending Me as an example when she talks about coercion, and she doesn't intentionally use the word grape. I use that word. And to a degree, I agree with her, because she's like, that sort of makes people walk away from the conversation, because they're like, you're being so ridiculous that I don't even hear you anymore. You're just some crazy woman saying that men are rapists. And that's not what I mean. It's not all men. But applying this to this same topic. We talk about weaponized incompetence is abuse, and they're like, oh my God, here we go.
Right.
Some woman saying we're abusive because I don't want to do the dishes. But if we have the ability to step back for a moment and look at, if we pretend that the conversation is in fact about dishes, it does look ridiculous, but that's based on the pretending that it's actually about the dishes when it's about the respect.
Mm-hmm.
And if you care about your partner, you would not shut down the conversation. You would not say to your spouse, you're ridiculous. And if your husband says, I don't care about the dishes, there is a strong possibility that he doesn't care about the dishes, and that he believes that it is about the dishes. And do I think that we should, we're already married. I'm not talking about before, but you're in the kitchen standing there with the husband that you've already chosen. You should have a conversation about how it's not about the dishes. It's about the respect. It's about caring for one's needs. And this is something that makes me feel good at the end of the day. My current partner and I have had this conversation. The dishes being done at the end of every day matters to me because I work from home. I wake up, the dishes are all over. I'll do it tomorrow. It doesn't really get done. So I want it done at night. I'm not saying he has to do it. I'm saying I need them done.
Mm-hmm.
And on one hand, like if I care, then I'll do them. But then I do everything because it seems that these men, not all men, don't care that anything gets done. So when it becomes abuse is you've had the conversation, you have talked about the minimum standard of care. I think where the comments that I get are, it would be solved with a conversation about the standard, meaning, and the example I always used was dishes, meaning I know we all have dishwashers for the most part, but wash, dry, put away. So if he washes them and leaves them in the rack, you actually didn't do the dishes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You washed the dishes. So now that we've had the conversation that when I say the dishes, I mean 1, 2, 3, and you understand that, further issue with that task, a pattern of it is abuse because and you're doing it anyway, and you are sort of tripling down on, I don't care. And all you're telling me every time a man repeats, I don't care, it's just dishes, they're willfully missing the point. Because again, what I said earlier, are men stupid? Absolutely not. I know women are like, but they are. They're not. And stop the rhetoric that they are. It perpetuates boys will be boys. And I find that to be gross. Men will be men. They're not boys. They're grown men who are making choices every day to leave the dishes in the sink when it bothers their wife. Now, if the dishes is such a thing, then maybe in this circumstance, in that particular relationship, and you and I, as educators and creators, we can't decide what other people do. But if you care so much about the dishes and he doesn't, then maybe wife does the dishes and husband does the laundry.
Mm-hmm.
But these men don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the tasks? If we're going to talk about an equitable household, then what's the task breakdown? And it doesn't have to be 50-50. It has to be whatever you guys decide. But where I see this in the women who are identifying so much with the idea of weaponized incompetence, it's that their partners leave all the domestic labor to them and say, I don't care about any of it. Now, the last thing I'll say on this particular piece of it is that in my own experience, and then when I have said this publicly, I see the comments just flood in that agree with what I'm saying. It actually, these men say they don't care. I don't care about the dishes. Funny, because when you want a clean plate, you absolutely are like, babe, why are there no clean dishes? Babe, where's my shirt? Babe, how come my drawers are empty? So they do want it done. They just don't want to do it. So again, it goes back to they're trying to get you to do it. The manipulation, weaponized incompetence isn't laziness. It is weaponized, meaning you have taken something to use it as a weapon, which is the intention to manipulate your partner. My own ex burned a shirt when he was ironing. The very first time I ever saw him iron a shirt, burned it. And I was like, oh, babe. So then I ironed his shirts for 10 years until we divorced. And it came out about 7 years in. He literally said, I burned that shirt so that you would know that I suck at ironing and that you would just do it for me because I know you don't want me to burn shirts. Straight up admitted he manipulated me in that situation to sort of, oh, I'm stupid. And I fed into that idea because I believe that men aren't good at domestic labor. Men choose not to be because women will pick up the slack. So if we stop picking up the slack, on one hand, it's helpful. On the other hand, if you are in an abusive relationship, not picking up the slack, you want confirmation it's abuse, stop picking up the slack and see what his reaction is.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my first like super viral videos, I'm so happy we're having this conversation because I want to know, like, I'm realizing what I've been doing with my platform is like arming women with the knowledge, mostly women, with the knowledge and the language, like what you're talking about. Like, when you don't do this, I am forced to. I lose my autonomy. I do not have choice. I lose my opportunities. I am financially at risk. You are withholding emotional connection to me. I'm not feeling seen or heard. I am isolated from my family and my community. Like, all of those things, as you're saying, are abuse. That's abusive. And I have known men, and this is kind of what I want to hear about next. I work with couples. I work with couples who are dealing with these issues. And about half the time, it's mostly women who are coming to me and saying, like, half the time it's women individually coming to me for a consultation to figure out, how do I bring this up? How do I talk about this? Is this something I can tolerate in my partnership? And the other half of the time, it's couples, and they're coming to me and they're saying, we're tired of arguing about this, or our schedules are weird, or like we got into this imbalance really unintentionally, and like I'm not purposely messing up this thing. It's just like you said, like every time I do it, I'm doing it wrong. I feel really discouraged, so I'm just letting her do it. There's that. And what's tricky, in my opinion, is that sometimes incompetence, or like not knowing how to do something, or not socially being conditioned to not know or care or see or understand the value of these things, is weapon of harm, but not intentional. Like, it becomes an act of harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, to me, the tricky piece of the language that I think I really need to figure out how to talk about and be really clear in my messaging. And like, I hope that our audience here right now, and we'll post it so that people can hear about it. But yeah, like, okay, so I'm going on a tangent, but everybody loves Raymond. Did you ever see the episode where he like intentionally, it's a couple of episodes, he intentionally bungles things, messes things up so that his wife will pick up the slack. And there's canned laughter. It's so, I think that abuse is happening in so many households without, like you said, like it's so harmful, and this is the norm. This is the social norm, and it is oppressive, and it, like all social systems, harms Black women and Hispanic women, and like it's all disproportionately, it's part of the whole bigger picture. I don't know. What do we where do you
Again,
see this the most?
Well, the intentional part of it, as I said, I believe that there are people who aren't quite aware, but so let's give all men the benefit of the doubt, and let's say that none of them know. You tell them and then they know, and that's like a conversation.
Yes.
People are like, but how do I make him understand? If you're having difficulty getting him to understand, it's willful. Because I'm going to sound very sarcastic, but I mean this truly. Are we speaking the same language? Meaning like English or whatever language you're speaking, but are we speaking the literal words out of our mouth, same language? Yes. That's the bar that we need to set. If he can understand the words, he can understand the concept, because men are intelligent. They're running the world, people. They're very intelligent. They're very capable. They can understand all kinds of complex issues and things. to say that I can run a multi-million-dollar company, or I can honestly even be a construction worker, a garbage man, a CEO, a cashier, a project manager, to do anything, to put your pants on and live life and make basic decisions. You have the capacity to understand that dishes need to be cleaned and laundry needs to be done and floors need to be swept. It really boils down to the entitlement that many men, not all men, have towards the woman being responsible for the domestic labor. And it is a true entitlement. And you can't really have the conversations without addressing where that comes from, which is the patriarchy, as much as people want to, somehow avoid that. Because again, I feel like the patriarchy is like saying the word rape. People get very like, that's not, you can't put it all on the patriarchy. Yeah, watch me, because it is. And that entitlement is what makes it like, I just don't see dishes. You just see them. And you hear the weaponized incompetence in the like, but you're just better at it, babe.
Yeah.
But you just care about the dishes. You just, you're better at laundry. You make the whites so white. That was what I used to hear. You make the whites so white. I'm like, it's bleach. I don't understand how you don't know that. And he did. It was that you pretend. And so for the men that are not pretending, the men who like, I literally just don't care about dishes. I disagree that you don't care about dishes. I disagree, because you do eat off clean plates. So you do care. You just don't want to wash them. But now that you've addressed it, now that they've come to you, whether it's the woman or the man, and whoever is learning the language and how to have the conversation from your perspective, and the other partner is now like, but I still don't get it, or that's not fair, or here's 26 different reasons why I work harder than you and you should do more. Once the conversation has been had and it continues, it's abuse. Period. To me, that is my view on it, is that it is abuse.
Yeah, so one thing that I have talked about a lot, because a lot of times, so one of the reasons I don't show the usernames or the profile names of people who I stitch anymore, because a lot of times people would go to their pages and just scream divorce, leave him, dump him, leave him, divorce. And of course, like on the internet, we have very little context, but oh gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, here's the thing. Sometimes you have different values. Like sometimes when you have these conversations, truly at the root of it is like, okay, in our household, we really value, teaching our kids the traditional, like the politeness way of setting the table perfectly with all of the forks and knives and eating at the table. And that's, or extracurriculars, or going to travel once a year, prioritizing different things within your life. And when one spouse is like, or one partner is like, well, those things don't matter to me. Why are you spending all of your time researching all of this stuff? It's easier. Like, why don't you just do it? Like those things literally, I love you and I'm happy to ride along in life with you, but I'm having a really hard time understanding the value there. Again, that's like, to me, that's coming in good faith, but that also still might mean that you are not a good pair. So, like,
Yes.
Maybe you just aren't fit to live a life together. Maybe you can be great co-parents, or if you've already like had children, but if in general your day-to-day life, you're not enjoying the day-to-day life, or you don't like the sort of household you have, like if you moved in with me, you might be like, why do you have so many tchotchkes? Why do you do your laundry like that? And that's okay. We don't need to live together. But if I entered your home and you asked me to take my shoes off, I'm going to take my shoes off because I care about you. And like, there's common courtesy, there's kindness, there's good faith. And there's people who are not good fits.
I think when you look at that, and I remember there was one, I'm going to use the word man loosely because really I mean troll, who kind of went off. He left approximately 475 comments on my page in a 5-day span, talking about weaponized incompetence and how happy he was that his wife left him because she nagged him about his underwear on the floor. And then I said, okay, so you live alone now? And he said, yes. And I said, are you happy? And he was like, yeah, I've never been happier to be away from someone who nags me. And I was like, honestly, great, good for
Great.
you. And he was like, now I only have to clean up after myself. And I said, so let me ask you, where do you put your underwear? And he was like, well, I do my own laundry now.
Oh,
I find it fascinating that you were, when married, expecting her to pick it up off the floor, and now you do it yourself. You don't live in filth. He was, because I was sort of, in fairness, I was mocking him, like, so you must live in
hmm
filth and leave crap
hmm
everywhere because previously that stuff doesn't matter to you. But it's interesting that now that you live alone, it matters enough that you do it yourself. So what I hear is that what didn't matter enough was your wife.
Yeah, yep. There you
You
go.
still wanted the clean underwear. You just wanted her to do it. And it comes from the entitlement. It came from the fact he kept insisting that the underwear don't matter. Step over them, leave them there. That was the other thing. It's either like pick it up yourself or literally just leave it on the floor until he does it himself. Why must I sidestep underwear? We're literally arguing about the entitlement of men to leave their underwear on the floor. I think it's interesting because, again, it goes back to the patriarchy. Why do men get married? Because I realize what we talk about, you and I, generally puts us in this world and almost puts blinders on of like men. Ugh. But why are men getting married other than for domestic labor and sex? Sex, whether you want it or not, labor, whether you're happy to do it or not, that's what I get from marriage. And I have never been able to figure out what women get from being married. I don't understand it. Based in this patriarchal view, is
hmm
men are just fighting us to say, no, I want you to do the laundry and have sex on command. I want you
hmm
to do everything. And I don't know what your problem is. Why are you so angry?
Yeah. Yeah. I had I had a really interesting question and I posted a video about it yesterday because I'm actually writing something right now about the patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism and how it shows up in this. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, like when I first started talking about this, I've been hesitant to say abuse. I've been hesitant to say patriarchy because it causes people to recoil. And if we can't get this into like I have a lot of Mormon and evangelical Christian followers who the church has been abusing them. The,
Mm-hmm.
they have been indoctrinated to believe their value is tied to these things. These are the roles. I also think the men in their lives have been abused by this. So this guy, this man who's been following me for a long time, messaged me on Instagram and he said, what do you do? Like, honest question. What do you do if you're running a business 24 hours a day or you work 80 hours a week? And like, how do I step in? How do I pitch in outside of that? And I had a couple of answers to that, and I want to hear your take on that. But whether whether we're conditioned and abused by a system that keeps us oppressed and exploited, which I think is a huge part of this,
Mm-hmm.
um, but within the home, when you work 80 hours a week and your partner is consistently telling you, I'm overwhelmed, I'm underwater, I need you to pitch in, I don't know what to do, I feel so isolated at home with the kids all day. Um, when they are forced into that role unwillingly, because of course at that point they're verbalizing, I am unhappy, and you are like, I don't know, just hire someone to help out, hire a babysitter once in a while, or and they're not hearing it, they're not understanding. Um, you're the person who's managing the domestic and care labor is sacrificing their wellness, their access to opportunities, their financial access. If they were to leave, like you said, like if you're in this situation, just leave. And then you said, like, I know that's not as simple of unaffordable childcare, no access to healthcare without a full-time job, which of course you can't pay for if you because childcare is crazy expensive. The system functions on the unpaid labor and the exploitation of someone being at home so that then someone can work 80 hours a week or run a business 24 hours a day. And if that family unit has accessibility to have community, have a little bit more ease, the entire system falls apart. The whole
Mm-hmm.
thing crumbles. So it's but we can't fix the system right away. I think that we're moving towards systemic change. And the more that we stop making this, it's not funny. It's not, stop making jokes about it. The viral videos where everyone's like, yeah, my husband too. Like, we got to stop.
It's not funny.
It's not funny. And within a household, in that scenario, yes, the woman in this scenario, because it's often cishet couples, the
Mhm.
primary caregiver is missing out on a sense of identity, on their feeling of worth, of purpose, of all of those basic needs. A lot of these people aren't eating lunch. They aren't using the bathroom, as like, there are so many health complications, higher cortisol levels, earlier death. It's not funny. And I think when you come to your spouse or your partner and you say, like, I am crushed. I'm
Mhm.
crushed. And you're like, okay, I'll pitch in on the weekends. What? No, that's not enough. It's not enough.
No.
It's abuse. Yeah, I'm gonna start using your language very clearly. I'm so glad. Like, it's abuse.
Yeah, it's abuse. There was a specific video that I made where I was very clear because I was responding to comments, and it wasn't the first video I was making on it. I wanted to put up, as a creator, right? You want to put up like a million disclaimers of what I'm not
Yeah,
talking about and what I am
right.
talking about. So I was like, this is not um lack of communication, because that is the biggest defense of like women just need to communicate their needs.
Tell me
And
what you want.
I know, because I see this on your page, and you've given me the language, maybe unknowingly, but you've given me a lot of the language that even I use when I talk about how it's not a lack of communication. Because where is this really weird assumption that women are not communicating? Because one minute we're nags and the next minute we're
Mm,
not communicating. So which is it? Because when we communicate, we get called a nag, but that's because you want us to not communicate it so that you can continue to not do it, which is abuse. So you can take me down 20 different paths of all the different possibilities. There is one possibility of it not being abuse. And the only way to know that for certain is to have the conversations that you teach people to have. Once that conversation has been had one time, it is abuse. You will no longer receive the benefit of the doubt from me or any other woman. It is abuse. I have communicated my needs. We speak the same language. I do not think that everyone needs to meet with a fair play educator to learn how to speak. I think that it's unbelievably helpful and beneficial. I love the fair play method. I love what you do. But women across the world, frankly, are having these conversations, begging for help. And on one hand, you have the men that are like, tough crap, or okay,
mhm.
fine, I'll take the garbage out more, which is like not what we meant at all. Or the ones that say hire someone. And I know that a lot of people, that's not an option. Don't get me wrong. There's a real privilege to even being able to hire help. But even in the cases of that privilege, there's still some resentment there, because we have to hire someone so that
Yeah,
you can avoid actually helping. And if
it's
anything,
still
what you're
work.
doing, because we did this, I hired a housekeeper to help me because I couldn't keep up. But I had to hire someone to help me with like his share.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So it was like
Yep,
me and the housekeeper were running the house,
yep.
not me and my partner. And there was
Hmm.
still resentment, which might seem like, oh my God, you women are never happy. But I wanted a partnership. And I'm
Uh-huh.
okay if you can afford to hire someone, trust me, do it. But I'm just saying that it isn't always the solution, because I'm hiring someone to take your load, which is
Right.
money out of our life that goes towards making your life easier, but I'm still cleaning. Like, I had to do the daily stuff, but we had a housekeeper come in every other week. How does that really help me? That doesn't really, I still have to do the dishes every day.
Yeah.
It
Well,
it
and
didn't help.
it's not partnership and it's not care. And um part of why the patriarchy is so abusive to men is that they don't learn the value of care. They don't think they're like, they feel like they're entitled to it, but not responsible for reciprocating it. Or like they don't see the reciprocal nature. A lot of, I'm saying these men,
Yeah,
not all men,
these,
of course.
not all men. Yeah.
And like, I think my husband is a really good example of like, he's a natural nurturer. He's very much very involved with the decision making around how we parent our children, and like very intentional about that. I'm not going to parent with a nanny. Like a nanny may join the conversation and might, like we had a nanny during the pandemic who was just like an extra caregiver in our life, truly, absolutely incredible.
Hmm.
But she wasn't making the decisions about what classes we want to sign our kids up for. How are we going to manage if someone's sick? Like, what decisions do we want out of our lives? She's not making the values based decisions. And to your point earlier, um, like when you carry all of the mental load and the physical labor and all of that, there are a million ways to drop the ball. Like we can't, it's not physically, emotionally, mentally possible um, to do it all when you have like a dead weight partner. It's not,
Hmm.
and single parents is also not sustainable and is not like that is it's horrible that we live in a society that makes them think that they have to live in this pillar and creates this. It's awful. Um,
Hmm.
but those, when you carry all of that, you get critiqued. It's like I had an abusive work situation. A lot of times when I'm talking about these things, I relate to that specific situation. I was asked to do too much. I did not get enough feedback or participation from my leadership. And then if I did something that they didn't like, I got punished for it. I was not given, like, where's my partnership? Where's my reciprocity? Where's my guidance?
Hmm.
There is a difference between a partnership and like tapping in or paying for your portion. That's not. And if you don't want to be married, Tom Brady, don't get married. If you don't want a family, don't have a family.
Hmm. I think those conversations do, when people talk about the lack of communication, I think that these conversations should be taking place prior to marriage. But I don't mean like, and actually, where this idea of it being communication kind of falls short is to have the conversation before you get married. Okay, I did.
Yeah,
I
right,
did.
right,
He
right.
lied. He lied completely. And then I think there was also like a real misconception. And I think it also stems from the entitlement. And even I can see it in the comment section on my side here of men being like, do you cut the grass? No, didn't think so. Do you take the garbage out? No, didn't think so.
Ugh,
So I'm thinking you cut the grass like once a week, once every other week, if you have grass. And I find it hilarious that most men who talk about cutting grass don't have grass. But anyway, they talk about cutting the grass or taking the garbage out or shoveling the
mm-hmm,
snow, which is
mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm.
done daily forever. And it's just, it actually, what it demonstrates to me is the real lack of awareness of what it takes to run a household,
Yes.
but more specifically, the disinterest in learning what it takes. When you have the absolute unbelievable audacity to talk about mowing the lawn or taking the garbage out as these like quick, walk from the bin to outside, put the garbage away, which may or may not be done every day, but let's even pretend it is done once a day, to everything else. Or,
Yeah.
well, the deal my wife and I have is that she does all the inside stuff and I do all the outside stuff. And it seems like, see, that's fair. But there isn't a planet where that would be fair because it's so
Mm-hmm.
obvious, which is where you get into the willful ignorance, the
Yeah.
willful misunderstanding of knowing that there is more to do in the home. And, if you don't care about crumbs on the floor, do you care about cockroaches? It,
Mm-hmm.
it really, it's just so fascinating that it really just does stem from the entitlement of like domestic labor is woman's work.
Yeah.
Now, I also have had women be like, I'm okay with this. Okay, so no one's talking to you. It's
Right.
that simple. If you are happy, truly, which I disbelieve, but if you are happy, I'm not here to I'm not here to destroy marriages, but if you are genuinely happy with staying at home, he's out, you're doing everything, then that's okay. I think when you look at, how it flips even to if two people are working, we both have jobs versus one is a stay-at-home parent and one is a work outside the home parent, it still turns into you work 40, 60, 80, I don't care, hours at work per week. And then that the expectation becomes your partner is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that they don't get rest because again, but she rests and sometimes as humans do. And nice to have pointed that out as if it's some wonderful benefit of being a stay at home parent. Being a stay at home parent which I've only done twice for 3 months each, and I did not enjoy, for obvious reasons in my case. But I think when you stay at home and then it becomes he can leave his dirty underwear on the floor because he has the stay-at-home partner, I actually almost find that more offensive than if you're a working partner. Because the working partner, it's just like maybe he's selfish. But when you actually are like, I am knowingly benefiting from my partner staying at home and doing all the domestic labor, that I will sit at the kitchen table when dinner is ready and have it served to me, and then have her clear the plate, and then have her do your laundry and fold the laundry and put away the laundry. And my previous mother-in-law would like rotate their underwear into the back, and everything was so perfectly done because that's the expectation, but it's the entitlement. We can communicate all we want, but when we talk about, going back to indoor outdoor chores, if you were to make a list, as you would in the fair play method, of all the things that need to get done, your list is like this, and her list is endless, 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 endless. Another good example that you use sometimes, or at least maybe not recently that I've seen, but you've used it, is like, we need to go grocery shopping. Well, someone has to make the list, which means someone has to go through the pantry and the fridge to actually know what needs to be on the list, to know what needs to be. So just give me a list and I'll go. You're not owning the task. You're still putting pieces of it on me. So you think, well, I went grocery shopping, acting so entitled that you should receive a list, acting entitled and feeling like, hey, I did my part, when you really didn't. It's not enough. And this is why women are leaving their marriages, and men are like, on my page anyway, sort of like, women are the ones causing divorce because they're leaving. What? Women are the ones
Yeah.
saying, I'm done. We're not causing the divorce. We're just
Yeah.
filing.
And even I get a lot of times, like, I take the trash out is a really good example. And something that is amazing. And when I first read the Fair Play book, I was enraged. I was furious. I was like, I willfully entered into a situation where my husband was building a career in something very niche, very cool. Like, and it's paid off. Like, he's doing incredible things. Um, and I entered into that while working full time, had 2 kids, and I was feeling really underwater. And my husband was helping me every second. Anytime he'd get home, immediately tap in. What do you need help with? What do you need help with? And I was like, why am I'm still pissed all the time. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm making myself sick. When I read the Fair Play method, she has just like a thick chapter where she describes the mental load behind these tasks. And I was just like, I was listening to it in audio driving home from work, sobbing. I was in flames. And I was like, I cannot believe that myself and every other woman that I know is shouldering this burden without even knowing it and not knowing how to communicate to get out of it. So, like the trash, okay? So people will say, well, I do the trash, I do the lawn. The trash. Monitoring, like, I have a very sensitive nose. My husband is the trash guy. So he has to know, like, okay, we had tuna salad sandwiches the other day. It's going to stink overnight, so don't leave it overnight. He will put something in the fridge and be like, I'm going to empty it from the fridge tomorrow morning so it doesn't stink up the house overnight. He monitors that sort of thing. If we're going out of town for 2 nights, checking that the trash is out on the back porch. It goes from the back porch to the alley because we have squirrels. He knows when we're low on garbage bags. He knows that if he doesn't put the garbage bag in right away, our 3-year-old will come and throw something in. It'll be gross. There are a million things that go in. Monitoring when it's going to be low on a weekend so that we can do a pantry clean out. Like, when you're just physically taking it to the alley, you're not doing the trash. You are not participating in the tiny little moments that make your family a family. Paying attention. He knows when I'm gonna like have a reaction to the smell. It's okay. I have a question. Last, I think we'll wrap up in like 10 minutes if we can. Why do people recoil when you say that this is abuse?
Well, I need to make that more clear. Why do men recoil? Because I
Uh,
called them abusers.
both. Yeah, I want to hear both. When they show up on a woman's feed, or the person who's experiencing this in their household. Why do they recoil and slide, and why do men recoil?
Well, women are not, on my page, as a rule, women are not the ones recoiling as a whole. You do get the few that are like, I like taking care of my man. Awesome. Like, I'm truly not here to be like, stop taking this is, and it's the weirdest thing, right? Men think that when we talk about like, I don't want to be your mommy, and they're like, why'd you get married? I, I can't have that conversation with you, sir. You're not making
Yeah,
sense.
no.
And we're getting onto a different subject. But why, when I talk about it's abuse, men, these men, not all men, as I want to just continually reiterate, these men are like, oh, so now I'm abusive because I don't care about the dishes. They're benefiting from it. So to be called out on that, even when you talk about the patriarchy, to be called out on that, that's why they say really pathetic things like, you seem bitter, which perhaps I do seem bitter, but you've never walked in my shoes. And so you don't understand why a woman would be resentful and bitter. And the mere fact that you're so dismissively like, oh, you're bitter, it actually demonstrates what a terrible human being you are, what a terrible partner you are, likely what a terrible parent you are, that you have no empathy, no concern for others, the selfishness that you display, and you quite blatantly put it on display. And the expectation when these men make comments like that are like other men gonna be like, yeah, right, isn't she? And unfortunately, that is quite common. And then when they get divorced, they're confused. And some men are happy, right? Like that one man that was in my comment section who was very happily divorced and yet doing the things that he didn't want didn't matter when he was
Mm-hmm.
actually married. It's just typical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so these men get upset because when I say it's abuse, they hear you're abusive because they're doing it.
Yeah.
And they don't like being called out for benefiting with the system, because what I'm doing is shaking up the conversation, as you are, as others are. And when we shake up that conversation, there's a threat to their system that benefits
Mm-hmm.
them. So they are afraid. They're afraid their wives are going to leave them. They're afraid that they're going to have to start to do more. They're afraid that they need to look at themselves and see that they are, in fact, abusive, selfish, awful human beings. But it's easier to just be like, you're bitter, because that's a better solution, is that the woman is the problem when it is, in fact, in that case, the man. Not, again, not that it's all men, and not that all men that are doing this are intentionally doing it, as long as they're open to the conversation. Now, why do some women not like the idea of it being abuse? Because it makes you a victim of abuse. And then you have to deal with the fact that this is actually not lazy, and that, because here's the thing, and I see this, which is, a different topic, but I see this in why do people stay in abusive relationships? Not always, but often what I talk about is a trauma bond. We are stuck in the cycle of abuse, for simple terms. And so if you realize that this is abuse, now you have to say, so I can't just explain this to him. Like, what you're telling me is he's never going to get it. Or you're telling
Mm-hmm.
me worse. You're telling me that he does get it and he's doing it anyway. My husband doesn't care. My husband knows and he's doing it anyway. Then we're experiencing cognitive dissonance. Wait a minute. He says he loves me. So you're telling me
Mm-hmm.
that he doesn't care? How could he not care and love me? Yes, correct. He doesn't. And then, of course, men go completely apeshit on me. It's not that I don't love my wife. You don't love her enough to respect her. You don't love her enough to try to take care of some things that would ultimately, even if you were just the most selfish man, doing the dishes would benefit you. It
Mm-hmm.
would literally benefit you. She would be less resentful.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, once you start walking down that path with those particular men, when you call it abuse, they flip it and they're like, she is abusing me because if I don't do the dishes, she won't give me sex, which is its own topic of,
Yeah.
you believe that sex is something that women have and they need to give it to you, and that there are transactional things you can do in your house to earn the sex. So then you have like the entitled men who should get it without doing anything. And you have the men who are doing tasks thinking it results in the sex. There was a video the other day of a man who was like, I just did the dishes, and
Yeah.
only to be told that my wife still said no. And I was honestly, I was so embarrassed for his wife who participated in the video. She was in, I assume she participated. She was just putting her hair in a ponytail in the back, but like, I will assume that she was, aware. Um, it, it's like you both subscribe to the transactional nature of it rather than, not to, I guess maybe it sounds like I'm bragging, but my current partner doesn't do the dishes to get sex.
Right.
He takes care of things that need to be taken care of so that we have time to connect and spend together. And men like him have tons of sex because they have a happy partner. So there's all these benefits, but these men are so rooted in the entitlement that they should get it anyway. They'll spend their whole life fighting to get what they deserve rather than earning it because they've been told since children that they deserve it. So they don't have to do any work. So you and I seem ridiculous and bitter when we are actually part of a movement of women who will not put up with this anymore. Yeah. And again, the women who are happy in the roles that they're in, like, be happy. I'm not here. We're not talking to those women. We're talking to the women who are miserable.
Yeah, that's Mending Me posted a video recently that I thought was a really good example of, this book really changed my life, but Bell Hooks, The Will to Change. And do you have it right there?
I literally have it right here. For those that don't have this book, like,
it's
The Will
amazing.
to Change.
And she talks so clearly about how the patriarchy convinces men that the only way to have intimacy, and this is in a lot of feminist literature and masculinity theorizing and all of that and analysis, but men have been taught that intimacy is sex, or like it's both the only way that they get intimacy, but also a form of dominance. So it's like real messy how men are taught to express love and receive love, and so good. So it can be really complicated because it's like not seeing these moments as intimate and not understanding. And I think that's the really important thing about us having these conversations out loud, because and I am a little bit in the camp of Mending Me, and I do think moving forward I'm going to be much more explicit about the fact that this is a tactic of abuse. But I try to arm people with the language, because I think a lot of men are exhibiting these abusive behaviors. And when they learn that they are causing real harm, there is this fear, like you said, this fear, this sadness, this grief of like, I knew you were annoyed. I knew you were resentful, and this has been affecting our partnership. But I didn't realize I was abusing you. I didn't realize I was hurting you so deeply. And there's that fear of like not being enough, and sadness that you're hurting your spouse. And I think that there is room for many different conversations about this, and continuously like easing people into understanding that maybe, like, I guess I'm going to throw this to you. Do you think that someone who's exhibiting abusive and harmful behavior, like weaponizing their incompetence, can they change? Is it worth, like, can they change?
So my very strong, passionate opinion that comes from years of research and education, not specifically from my own situation, is no. So can they is yes, but that's actually not the right question.
Okay.
Will they is the question. Can they change? Sure, absolutely. I believe in change. I believe most people, almost every person can change. I believe that there is a real comfort in not changing. Change is scary. No matter what topic we're talking about, going to therapy can be scary. Doing anything like this, really looking at the benefits that you have as a man in society, in your home even, that is scary, because especially when you're benefiting, right? Like if I start looking at this, does that mean I have to start like doing the dishes and laundry and talking to my wife and caring? These men, not all men, don't like women. They married us for the labor and the sex and the status or whatever else they want. But there's that rooted entitlement that it all kind of comes from. So looking at it is hard, and they're less likely to change. They can change. So then will they change? What does change look like? And I always say in the context of abuse. What does change look like? And that's different for everyone. I don't have the list for you to say what change looks like in your house, but I'll tell you what it doesn't look like. And then that's, to me, the best spot to work from. It doesn't look like, let's use dishes as the example since we've been going on that. So you do the dishes 7 days a week and your husband does the dishes 0 days a week. So now he's trying to change and he does dishes half-assed once a week or every other week, or does them once and says, I did them 3 times. Anything like that where he's actually choosing to not see the reality because it's willful. There is no world where you can say, but I did it 3 times and they really, really believed that they did it 3 times. You know you did it once. You're just you're trying to overinflate what you've done to change, to show me that you've changed. Change looks like, I'm hurting you. Oh my God, I had no idea how much this was important to you. Let's talk. You go through the conversation and the change is relatively immediate. Now, it might be you used an example of dishes and now he's doing dishes all the time, but you still have a problem with laundry. Maybe you have the conversation again. But how many times, right? And there's no number of how many times, but you yourself will know in your own marriage, your own life, how many times. But the biggest message that I want people to understand is stop saying he just doesn't understand how tired I am. He just doesn't. Men are not stupid. Stop saying men are stupid. Stop laughing when people say men are stupid. Stop thinking it's adorable. Stop with the boys will be boys. Stop all of it. Stop laughing at it. If you're not making those jokes, but you're just laughing at it, or you're like, oh, men. I used to, men. That is an excuse. If you can run the world, you can do the dishes because that's far easier, far more of a simplistic task. And it's interesting because they behave like children in they've sort of put you, they're like parental seekers, right? They're looking for a mommy figure, a caretaker, because they're entitled to that. And then they wonder why there isn't, yes, more sex, but also just more kindness, more like, I'm going to make your lunch for you. Because that's a good example, in fact, of women who make lunch for their husband. And her name escapes me right now. Motherhood. Anyway, you would know who I'm talking about if I had her face up here. But anyways, there's another creator who I love who talks about this too. And she talks about, like, I don't make my husband's lunch. Not Kristen Bell, her.
Oh,
Her
yeah,
name.
yeah. Not
Yes.
Kristen Bell.
Yeah. So she talks about, like, I don't make my husband's lunch. And people are like, oh, you don't take care of your husband. She does other things, right? People are
Yeah.
missing the message willfully. But it's like, you want your wife to make your lunch. And I, quite frankly, would have preferred to eat broken glass than to have made my ex's lunch. My current partner, I make him lunch every day because he does a million things. I make his lunch, and if he makes his own lunch, I'm almost mad at him because I want to reciprocate the care. So his life is benefited by his own behavior because he is not those men. He is a man who isn't willfully missing the point. He can see it and it's working to his advantage. He gets all the things
Yeah.
he wants. He's incredibly happy with everything because he puts in the effort and it's reciprocated back. But I think, again, the entitlement is that I don't have to put anything out to get for most men because they're bred that way. They're taught.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think an important distinction in what you were saying, like, you're saying, I need you to, let's split up the chores. And they're like, I'll do the dishes. And then they don't, or they do a bad job, or they just like, it's not to a standard that meets the health and safety of the family, things like that. Um, like you said, willful ignorance and weaponized incompetence. And then there's like what my husband and I were dealing with, which is we had different standards and had not communicated them. And so when I was saying you're not doing the dishes, he's like, I do a load every day. I put the pots away because I know that's important. We had not talked about what doing the dishes meant. And when we did, both of us followed through because that's intentionally showing up for one another. That is, okay, we're having a break in communication. Let's I have a whole playlist on my TikTok where you can look at fair play. I have a highlight and my Instagram where you can look at fair play. I have a YouTube video where you can just learn the basics, get the book. Sit down, however it works for you. If you communicate it, they can't pretend they don't know.
Yep.
I think that's kind of like what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, I think, to summarize the entire conversation is I'm all for giving anyone the benefit of the doubt. I'm not just going to say, "Oh, you're doing all the domestic labor, your husband's abusive," because that's not
Right,
fair.
right.
Perhaps you've
Mm-hmm.
never had the conversation, but I just think that the basic assumption that women aren't having the conversation is bananas, because
Mm-hmm.
we are, and we're called a nag. And so only you, the woman who is feeling this, and men can be on the receiving end of it as well, but it is in our worlds anyway, mostly women. If you've had the conversation and it persists, or the change is unbelievably slow and still kind of stumbling all over, and he's not getting it, you have to understand that he does get it and he's doing it anyway, and it's a manipulation tactic. Because if he does it wrong and he's like, "I just don't understand, the dishes are clean, they're just in the rack, what's your problem?" But you've already said, "I don't want them in the rack, I want them in the
Mm-hmm.
cupboards."
Mm-hmm.
Then it's willful. And when it's
Mm-hmm.
willful, it becomes abuse, because it is a pattern, and he understands and he's doing it anyway. Intention and the pattern are the indicators of it being abuse. So the question you need to ask yourself then is, can I stay if this is the rest of my life? If, like,
Mm-hmm.
why stay married if the issue is now going to be that, like, I'm either going to complain about the dishes forever, or I'm just going to shut up and do them in a resentful way and hate my husband. So neither of those things should be options. That said, I want to be clear, as I've said a couple of times, I'm not saying just leave as if it's easy. I can try,
Mm-hmm.
if you are truly in an abusive relationship, that is my wheelhouse. That is what I coach on: how to leave, how to want to leave, how to see what is really happening, how to see that it's not going to change. That's my wheelhouse. So I think you and I make a great pair, because if you want to learn how to have the conversation, Laura is your best resource. If you've had the conversation and it's not working and you don't know how to leave, whether it's logistical reasons, emotional reasons, I'm your next option. So
Mm-hmm.
this is, it's helping people be able to find their words and express what the issues are, and really look at an equitable house, which may not be 50-50. It's whatever is equitable for
Mm-hmm.
that particular couple. I'm a fan of 50-50, but whatever works for the couple. And if you're having the conversation and it's not getting better, look at the situation and make some decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the main questions that I ask, and I'm so glad we're connecting because I think I'm probably going to refer a lot of people your way for coaching. But one of the, like, two of the questions that I ask are, is this sustainable? And what needs is this relationship meeting for you? Because it might not be enough. And to your point, like sometimes maybe the kids, for a variety of reasons, staying is the option right now. But how can you consider your options? How can you get other needs met in other ways through community, or, and of course, in abusive situations, obviously, there's a lot of isolation in a lot of cases and very complicated. But if any of this resonated, do you have a website or like an email address or anything? How can people actually get in contact with you to see if you can work with
Yeah,
you?
can actually work with me. So my website is strongerthanbefore.ca, because I am Canadian. So strongerthanbefore.ca, or obviously on TikTok, Stronger Than Before. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube as well. But to actually connect with me and look to possibly work with me, I've got sessions that people can book. I have validation sessions, which are shorter and less expensive if you just kind of want to ask some questions like, "This is what's happening. Is this abuse?" I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a great opportunity to start that conversation. And then if we discover that it is, then you got some decisions to make that I can help you make. And I'm not like a, leave your husband. It's a make a decision that makes sense for you, and I work with both men and women on when they're being abused. So I direct people to your page too when I talk about weaponized incompetence. I'm like, you gotta check out her account and look at all the ways that it's showing up. And if it resonates with you, you might be
Mm-hmm.
experiencing abuse.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, awesome. And so yeah, if that is uh something, if you're like you don't think it's abuse, you are having a hard time with the communication around it, or you're ready to take the first step of, is this a communication issue? I also do coaching. It's fair play facilitation and consultations, and you can find me at thatdarnchat.com. Any last thoughts? This has been so awesome.
I know I've learned a lot. I had one question that I wanted to ask about that always came up on my page, which was around when women do the same thing, when women are weaponizing incompetence. My take on it briefly was just women are more likely to use performative helplessness rather than weaponized incompetence. In your mind, are those the same? Are they different?
Interesting. I don't feel like I don't think I've had enough time to think about that to give a proper answer.
Can I
Like
give you an
that
example?
term. Yeah.
Like, excuse my coffee cup here, but like, babe, can you open this jar?
Oh, yeah,
Babe,
yeah.
can you take the garbage out? It stinks. Babe, can you lift this? It's heavy. Like the pretending that she is incapable of things to get him to do things. I think it's a slippery slope, and it's going to sound like
Mhm,
I'm just always against the men here, but
mhm,
women will sometimes do that as kind of like a last ditch effort. It is manipulation, full stop. There's no
mhm,
but.
mhm,
I'm just saying when women are doing it, it's kind of a response where they're like, if I pretend that I can't, maybe he'll do something,
mhm.
because generally he's doing nothing. So a little bit on that side, but I do know that there are some women. I just in my experience and my research, it's rare, but that women are actually using weaponized incompetence against the men in their lives. Do you see that ever, where it's a man reaching out, or even in your comment section?
Yeah, and so one specific situation is somebody that I know well. And I think it was less weaponized incompetence and maybe other tools of abuse, but their child, it might have been neglect, their child was not safe with the mother because she was doing a lot of things that made it so that he did not feel safe leaving the baby with her. And so in that circumstance, like possibly it could have been weaponized incompetence, but it feels like because women are expected to do these things, we don't make as many jokes about it because it's so glaringly obvious that it's abusive, it's neglect. It's like when you see a mother who the house is a mess, the baby's not fed while the dad goes out, it's like, whoa, whoa, that's neglect. Like that's really abusive. But when you see a dad do it, it's incredibly socially acceptable. So I think it's the same behavior, willful ignorance, willfully robbing your partner of their time and autonomy. In my opinion, yeah, that's abuse either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, at that job specifically that I'm always thinking about, I had one person who continuously would assign me something, and then be like, or she would be assigned a task, and then she would push it past the deadline and then get to me and be like, I didn't know how to do it, or I did it wrong. Can you teach me how to do it again? And so I wouldn't give her the tasks again because it looked bad on me. And I continued to have to pick up her slack because she was willfully taking and willfully messing it up. So this could be showing up in many, many places for people, but I agree. I think there's a difference between like stroking his ego and maybe like that manipulation of trying to get something done versus like isolation, gaslighting with all of those other things.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. All right. I share that opinion. I agree with you, actually. So we're on the same page from both of our perspectives. But yeah, it was such a great conversation with you, and learning about how weaponized incompetence is or can be abuse, and how to kind of navigate through how to figure that out.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to try to take this conversation. I might cut up pieces shareable, but
Mm-hmm.
this will be accessible for us to rewatch. And if you have any questions, you can find us on TikTok. Are you on Instagram, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay,
Instagram, Facebook,
TikTok.
YouTube, all that.
Beautiful. Thank you. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye.